So let me give you a little backstory on the company, because it'll bring perspective and focus on what we're doing and what we'll see out there on the floor, okay? So Creel Printing, a fantastic story, by the way. It has a long history in the city of Las Vegas, has been here for many years, 75 years. Their family history is here. The company itself is just hit its 60th anniversary. So we're very proud of 60 years in business in Las Vegas, supporting our economy. We've seen tremendous growth. If any of you have been here for just a little period of time, you've seen growth. But particularly over the last 25 years, there's been some outstanding growth in Las Vegas. And we have reaped those benefits, but also have worked hard to be part of that growth. So the printing and lithography industry in itself is tremendous. It's one of the oldest industries, obviously, we're aware of, right? The printing press goes back a very, very long period of time. And Heidelberg, if you guys are familiar with that name or have heard that name before, was essential in the process of the printing process, the printing press. And you're going to actually see Heidelberg presses out on our floor. So it's really neat to think that over 400 years ago that this took place, and today we're still operating that same piece of equipment, only in today's times and terms. So 60 years in business. We were a very small company when I started with them. We were about 12 to 13 employees. There's now 600 employees for Creel Printing. We were over on the northeast side of town, not really north, but close heading that direction, more off of the I-15 and Sahara area, for 50 years. And so we've been in this building for 60 years, and it's a state-of-the-art building. It was built specific to our platform for success, and it is just a tremendous and a fantastic building. This company and our facility and our operations has been featured in just about every trade industry globally on print. What's also going to be fun to talk about today is not only the processes of what we do, but also to talk about next steps for our industry, right? So we all are very familiar with mobile technology and online technology and the relevance to all of that. For the last decade, there's been a really fast movement to the progression of that and how print and online marry with each other. What does that look like? And we'll talk a little bit about that as well, because that's real important that you understand that, because for several years, recent years, people were thinking that print was going to go away, like the newspapers have with respect, and that hasn't happened. It's actually been to the contrary over the last 2 years, where there's been a tremendous amount of growth in print. And the reality of that is that what all of these really smart people thought is that because there was so much technology in the digital and online presence, that print would be irrelevant. Well, they forgot about a very key component, which is the human aspect, right? The tangible human aspect experience of looking at print. If you're looking at a catalog, or you're reading in a publication, or you're sitting at home flipping through a book, there's a human experience, tangible experience in doing that can never be replaced with a tablet, a mobile phone, or your computer. One has its own direct initiative versus the other. They are not replacing one another. They're actually very married together when you look at it and to see what's going on now. So the excitement of that is that the industry is growing very rapidly with both of them collectively together. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? And Creel Printing, unlike, I shouldn't say unlike, but as a company, we started looking at these online initiatives and these mobile device initiatives as part of our marketing strategy. So when my sales force goes out to market and they're meeting with customers or prospects, one of the key components in our talking points is mobile technology, online components. We build apps here, we build websites here, we do social media campaigns. All of that is part of our initiative to grow our business to be more of a one-stop shop versus just saying we can print this, but go talk to ABG marketing, or ABC marketing rather, down the street. We're actually waist deep in that. We didn't just dip our toe in it, we jumped into it. So we spent a tremendous amount of time in technology and brought on some tremendous talent to be able to support the online and mobile marketing devices that go along with print. Family owned, as I mentioned a little while ago. The owners are still here. They're in here every day. Debbie and Alan Creel, very involved in the company. I've been with the company for 26 years. There's a lot of people like that here that have been here for many years. So that kind of shows you not only the stability of our company and the industry in itself, but it also talks about the family and the ownership and the culture of Creel Printing when you have that many people that have been here for that long period of time. So we're going to start now with the process that we'll go through here. Is we're going to start with pre-press, okay? And there's a reason that and I'll talk about each little stage of how we do our jobs here and why they're relevant. And then I'll probably have some talking points in between, and then I'll also ask questions, okay? So does anybody have any questions for me a little bit about how we go to market, right, which is through print and online? I'll talk about the different types of printed pieces when we get out on the floor that Creel specializes in. But before I get into that, what's real important for a company of our size, being the competitive market that we're in, which is just terribly competitive, aggressive. We're 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. People matter most. The employees matter most. They're everything to the success of our company. It's a very high-stressed job, to put it simply. Being 24/7, we have tremendous deadlines. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of people touching the product. You are constantly walking around with a fire hydrant, putting out fires, because it's so, and that's obviously, you know, not real. I'm just using it as a metaphor. But you walk around with a fire hydrant or a fire hose putting out fires that customers don't even know about. We manage it internally, of course, because there's so much happening with the job. And you'll kind of get an understanding of that as we walk through the plant and see what's happening and all the functionalities. But customer service is an essential ingredient to Creel success. They're tremendous. We have a team of about 15 customer service agents for this company alone. And by the way, we're 3 companies strong, but we're talking about Creel Printing today. So the customer service people, they touch the project from inception to delivery, okay? They touch every part of the project, and it's again, it's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job. They carry their smartphones with them everywhere. They are in connection with the Creel and the customers 24/7, and it's really important that we're that way and connected, because you can't, it's kind of, let me put it into perspective this way. It's kind of like an airport or a hospital. It never stops. People never stop coming in. There's no end, right? And that's the same with us. We can't turn out the lights and go home for a couple hours and come back. You can never recover from that. So because of our business and our platform, it's a constant revolving carousel of business that is just nonstop. So you can't stop for that, right? So they're connected 24/7. I get emails from customer service reps and department heads in the middle of the night, 200-300 times a night, right? So it's just an ongoing business of very fast paced, but it's exciting and it's very cool. And I love that kind of energy. And so it takes a certain type of person to be in this field. And whether you're out running the equipment, or you are managing the shipping that's 24/7, or you are running the pre-press department, or you're handling proofs, or whatever the case may be, it's very exciting. We all have to work together as a team to have any kind of success, right? And so it's really exciting to have that kind of atmosphere on a daily basis. Okay, so customer service essential. They touch it from the very beginning of the sale. And let me give you just a little perspective of what sale is, okay? So the guys, as we talked about, they go out to market and they speak to people that fit our demographic of business. And they are, if they talk about the print part of it, and they talk about the mobile technology part of it, and they also talk about some real key added value services, which is how quickly we can turn their job, which is a very important asset to our business, the technology that we can bring to them and their company, and the steps that we can help them to grow their company. So those are the primaries when it comes to going out to market and selling. I can't just sit down and talk to somebody and say, hey, I'm really good at what I do, and I'm going to give you a great price. That's a salesman. We don't do that. I don't teach on that. I don't lecture on that. What I do lecture and teach on is about teaching customers something. It's so, people love to be taught, they hate to be sold. So if someone sits down with me and he's a car salesman and he starts telling me about, you know, how fast the car is going to go and how cheap the price is going to be and what my payment's going to be, I'm already turned off by him. But if he sits down and starts talking to me about what the engine's capable of, the lifetime of the car, what the warranty looks like, how it's going to benefit me, those kind of things I'm being educated on and I'm not being sold on. We do the same thing. We educate our customers on how we can help their business grow, and that's what brings us our business. So that's the sales process. From that point, if you've sold a job, what happens at that point is you've obviously identified a schedule in the process of selling it. Then everything nowadays is digital format. I don't know if you guys are familiar with what it was before, but there used to actually be film. We used to process film in order for us to process a proof, in order for us to process a printed plate, to put it on the presses and to print it. It's all digital conversation now. Everything comes to us primarily through a secure network, not even discs or DVDs or hard drives. I haven't seen those in years. It comes to us through a secured online network that's our own hub that they log into, and they upload their printed product, their pages, their poster, whatever it is that they're going to print through those that secure portal. From there, we take that and we rip that, which is rasterize that. That's a process that we have to do before we go into the printing part of it. From that rasterization, we can generate a proof. All of our proofs, most of our proofs to date, are also digital. There used to be hard copies where you'd actually physically take a proof to a customer and they'd look at it. Again, the conversation is primarily digital, so they see it online and they view it online. Now, the risk factor in doing that when it comes to pre-press technology was that the colors didn't match, right? There was a problem with colors. In other words, if they're looking at their monitor and their monitor's not calibrated to what our proofing software is, their reds, their purples, their yellows, whatever those colors may be, may not be the same. So I'm printing it on press based on a file that I received, and they look at it and go, that's not the purple I wanted, or the red that I wanted, or the yellow that I wanted. So the way that we have, and again, through technology and through advancements in technology, we now have what's called closed loop color. And it's another digital conversation that happens between us and them that allows our colors to match. So it's very important that they're calibrated to what we calibrate, to what we blueprinted on press, so everybody's talking to each other digitally. Again, advancements in software and technology have allowed us to be able to do that. Very, very cool stuff. Now, I can dig down as deep as we want to go into the pre-press part of it, but the simplicity of pre-press is this. Everything is digital technology now. It's all online, okay? When we print in 4 colors. Do you guys know what process inks are or process colors are? Have you learned about that yet? Anybody? Okay, so can you tell me what the process colors are?
CYMK?
That's right, CMYK. So when you're talking computer talks, you're talking what? RGB, right? We print in CMYK, which is the process inks, all right? Been that way for as long back as you can remember since it started. And that is black, blue, red, yellow. Okay, so everything that we take, when we rip that or rasterize that, it is gone through a process of taking and separating those images into those 4 colors. That's how we repeat that image when we go to press, okay? So you're going to learn about that. So when you're out on the printing press, we're printing in a black unit, a blue unit, a red unit, and a yellow unit. That separation that came apart through that digital rasterization is now brought back to you on the printing press through aluminum plates that will actually print the images that are on those aluminum plates, and I'm going to show you so you can see that, onto a rubber blanket, and that rubber blanket actually imprints it onto a piece of paper. It'll print the black. The percentage is the black that was separated from the CMYK, correct? And it'll print the blue on top of the black, and then the red on top of that, and the yellow on top of that. And then you'll come back with the full color, 4-color imagery. Very cool. You'll see that in a moment. It happens at very, very high speed. To put perspective of speed and volume, we are, as a company, probably pushing, I would say, upwards of 20 million pieces a month of product that go through this facility, which is pretty good size. It's certainly not enormous, but it is very good size. It's very comfortable for us to be able to do that. We're always looking for more because we are crazy that way. So again, the process, black, blue, red, yellow, right? Separated from RGB, which originally came to us from you guys on a digital platform, sent up to a secure site. We took that, we ripped that into the CMYK, we sent back to you guys digital proofs, which you could actually look on your screen. Here's page 1, here's page 2, here's page 3. We're all looking at the same ink colors because they've been calibrated together through the software. Once you've done that, then we go ahead and we take our internal proofs that we need for ourselves, which we create for ourselves, and from that point it actually becomes a live job that can be scheduled for press. If we're referring to a magazine or a book, that means several pages that are going to be printed at once. Okay, and there's certain presses for that as well. So we're going to talk primarily about page printing, which is book printing or magazine printing. That's what we do most. Any questions before we get into actually looking at the proofing and the plate process, which is a wall that we're very proud of. For years we didn't put our awards on the walls, our accolades on the walls. We didn't do that, but we decided to start to do that when I started writing a culture initiative a few years ago, because I wanted people to speak and know about Creel Printing and who we are and be proud of it. We weren't there to boast. We wanted to just make sure that we could share some of our awards that we've had throughout the years, and to not go too deep into what you're seeing on the wall. These are awards that come to us from a couple major national and global companies that give out these awards based on a number of things, but mostly the type of print that you've produced and the quality of print that you've produced. And so most of these awards we've won first, second, or third place. Most of them are first place among all of our peers throughout the world, actually. So we're very proud of these awards. They're just, you'll see the different kinds of print product. This will help bring perspective to some of the things that we do. Most of the stuff that you're seeing here is either a catalog or a magazine. There's another catalog down there. There's some commercial print there. But what we do really well, better than most, is high-end magazine print. That's what we're really, really good at. And so most of the stuff that you see here will be that. Any questions, guys, so far? Okay. Here, guys, is and let me just recap real quick because it'll help us understand why we're here, but we talked about the process of file submission, right? Remote technology, secure proprietary portal that you guys would upload if you were a customer to it. We take that digital information, we rip that digital information from RGB into CMYK, and we create a digital proof and we send it back to you guys to approve. Once you've approved that, then what happens is the next steps that occur are in this area of the company right here, which is called our proofing and our plating process, okay? So now we are making proofs for us internally, as well as what's called an imposition. And an imposition is typically done on a paper, and it is designed for us to make sure that everything is laid out correctly when we go to print the job. So for example, if you're printing a 100-page magazine or catalog, you want to make sure that those pages are in the correct order, right? So when we deliver the book, you go from 1 to 2 and not 1 to 4 or 1 to 7, you know, so it's important that that imposition is accurate. And it's just another secure process that we take in the proofing to make sure that we deliver the product right, okay? These units right here are our plate processors, okay? And plate processors are exactly what it sounds like. They're there to process the plates. And how are they processing those plates? From the digital information that you approved on those proofs that I sent you. Okay, so once you say, okay, the proofs look fantastic, we take that, we impose it through a software platform, and then we create the plates based on that imposition. So when you look at a plate, guys, the plate's going to be like this. You're going to have pages that are going to be on that plate, okay? And those pages are going to be, again, separated into CMYK. So when you're looking at a black plate, all that you're going to see is the black densities that are supposed to be there that's going to print. So you'll see the type, because we know type is black. We're going to see the shadows, because we know there's black in the shadows, and so on. There's black in a lot of things that you never knew of, and that speaks to the other colors as well. Okay, so again, we took the CMYK, we separated it into 4, right? And so you're only getting, each plate will represent what that separation is. Is that clear, guys? Okay. These plates process those density patterns from each one of those inks, and then from there we take the 4 plates and we take it out to the press, and I'll show you guys how they'll go on the press and then how it prints from the press. Okay, some of the plates have already landed here, and so to talk about how things were and how things are now, years ago, remember I talked about how we used film, right? So film was the way that we processed plates, and it was you would lay film on top of these aluminum plates with these tremendous lights, and you'd pull the lights down on top of them and shine through and capture that film and shoot it onto the plate. Actually shoot that film onto the plate. It's all digital software like everything else is these days. Technology allowed us to be able to process it very fast, very efficiently, and very accurately. But we don't see a plate coming out, so I'm going to take one and I'm going to show you. So again, we're CMYK, right? So here's a plate that is obviously page work, right, like I talked about, and as I showed you or demonstrated to you visually, you'll see the different pages on here, okay? So all you're seeing on here now is actually what the black is going to print, okay? So now if I was to put this back, same images, only now you're only seeing what the yellow is going to print. You understand? And so the red and the blue are going to be similar. You're only going to see what the image allows based on the color separation of CMYK. Black, blue, red, yellow. Okay? All right, so from here, follow me guys, proofs. And in years past, color proofs were always seen by the customer. as we talked about earlier, advancements in technology allows them to be able to view their proofs digitally, online, from their tablet, their computer. Even some customers view them from their iPhone if they're in a hurry, right? And the digital platform allows us to be able to proof things from wherever you are at any time. Before, you'd have to FedEx proofs to customers. They would get them the next day or the 2 days later. They'd look at them. If there was changes or things they wanted to do, they would mark up the proofs. Then they would redo those changes on their computer, remake a disk, and send me back the proof in the disk. So there might be 3, 4, 5 days go by before I get to those changes that they've made, right? And then I have to make a new set of proofs, send them to them for another review. So there was a much lengthier process, right? And when we were doing that, I thought that was lightning fast, right? So to put it in perspective, let's say a typical turn time was 10 to 12 days. From the time that they gave me their information, now remember, we're 24/7. Weekends mean nothing to me. I'm operational weekends. And my customers have to know that, and they have to participate in that if they want me to do their job fast. And we've been 24/7 for as long as I've been here. So, but years ago, the process that I just mentioned might take 10 to 12 days to do the job. It now takes 3 days to do the job. So we've cut that time in half by 4 because of digital technology. These are the proofs, and now these are obviously the CMYK is back together, so it's a complete proof. So they can look at this and see that everything is the way that they want it, and they can do this digitally as they do.
I have a question.
Certainly.
You're calling it...
Good question. So when she means substrate, she's talking about the paper, right? So in general, all of our proofs are created on the same paper. However, there is several pieces that we do where the customer wants us to generate the proof on the substrate that they're going to print on to get them that feel, that look, right? It's not real common. It's very expensive to do that because the proofers are designed to pump out one type of, just like your printer. Your printer is not made to do 10-point and matte, and it's made to do bond paper, right? Basically, that's what it's made to do. Anything outside of that, now, although those proofers are very advanced, we can do that, but it's just not that much of a calling for it. And to take that a little bit further, we have 3 types of color proofers, right? You're seeing one type of color proofer. 2 out of the 3, actually all 3 of them are digital proofers. But there's one proofer that we have which is called a Fuji proof. Just like these plate processes are Fuji, they're our primary partner in our pre-press development and processes. It's called a Fuji final proof, and that digital information that they output actually outputs what's called a dot. So when we print everything in dots, okay? So when we separate it into what's called a DPI, okay, a dots per inch. Now, the Fuji proof, the software is so advanced on this proofing capability, this proofing equipment, that it actually will generate a proof as if it was printing on press. So the match is almost 100%. These are very close. You can call these 90% of what you'll get out on press, but the Fuji proof will actually give you 100% of what you can print on the press accurately, which costs more money for the customer to see that proof, but all of the higher end publications want that proof if they're going to do it. Okay, now, because it's going to get a little loud out there, I want to talk to you a little bit about the printing process, okay? So, but before I go any further, do we need to recap what we've talked about? Go right here.
Like when you do it, so this is like one page or that?
Good question. So I'm going to show you what's called an imposition. These are color proofs. They're made to look at this way, but I'm going to show you an imposition, which we are called blue lines. And the reason they're called blue lines is because years ago they were produced on blue paper. They haven't been produced on blue paper in a decade or more, but we still call them blue lines. It's just you can't get out of it, right? So I'm going to find a blue line. I'm going to bring it over here and I'm show you. And I'm going to do that now so that we can talk about it while she's at, right? Internal proofs for us is this goes out to press for us. Now, even though our presses are calibrated and talking to our software here, we still want to make sure, as another process, to make sure that we're getting that color accurate for our customer. Okay, so we have these out on press as well. This information here that you see across here, these bars right here, is digital information that press picks up through an infrared process that allows us, again, our computers to talk to each other, that helps us to be able to prepare our printed piece faster and more efficient than was done years past. Okay, so what that means, and I'll talk about it too, and I'm going to get to that in a moment, but I want to talk about the blue line. So we have this as a proof, and we have this as a proof. This is the imposed proof that you were talking about. How does this come together as a book, right? So when you open this up, it's actually going to open up like that, okay? Now, depending on the bindery process, and not to get too deep on this, depends on how we lay this out, okay? So binding is how you actually make the book finished, okay? How is it going to finish? And there's two types of binding that you guys will be aware of. One of them is called perfect binding, which is actually a square spine. It's glued. The other type of binding that you see is called a saddle stitch, where there's actually staples in it, okay? Two different processes, and two different reasons why we do them. Most of it's dependent on the customer, another one is dependent on the page count. When you get to a certain page count, you have to perfect bind. You can't saddle stitch when you get to a certain page count, okay? So this would be considered a saddle stitched imposed blue line. And so if you were to open this up, it would unfold into what you're seeing here, okay? Does everybody see that? Okay, so this is another process for us to go through. And again, remember this was the plate, right? And it was broken down into 4 colors. And when this piece of paper, I'm going to get one for you so you can see it, and you'll see it out there, actually goes through the process of the press, it also goes through a process of what's called folding. So at the end of the press, it goes through a folding configuration, which allows it to actually come down to what's called a folded signature, okay? And you're going to see this out on press. I don't want to ruin the proof. And that's how they back each other up and come into pages, okay? And you'll see that very clearly when we go out to press. So this and this, these are my Bibles out on the floor. I got to follow these through the process. We okay, guys? Everybody following me? Okay. Any questions, guys? Okay, so what have we talked about? We talked about selling the product and how we do that. We talked about customers submitting files through the porthole, the secured line, right? We talked about how they proof those files that they sent to us. We talked about how we separate those files into CMYK. From there, we make proofs. The customer approves those proofs either digitally or we send them a copy of this. We also create what's called a blue line, which you guys saw there, which is an imposed piece of paper folded down that actually gives us page by page of how the book's going to come together. Okay? From there, and the job's been approved, we go out to press. Now remember, we make the plates out here in this room, right? This process of the plates. Those plates have to go out to press. To talk about the printing process simply is that just like the plates the files that are separated into 4 colors, we print in 4 colors, of course, right? Your black, blue, your red, and yellow. Now there's basically 2 types of printing presses out on the floor, both of which are called offset printing presses. Okay, now offset printing presses is the process of offsetting the imagery onto the piece of paper, all right? There's a process of actually offsetting the image onto the paper versus what's called digital printing, which we also do at another facility, right? Now digital printing is like a laser copy. It's digitally applied and it has different purposes and processes, okay? But what you're going to see here today is large equipment that's designed for offset printing, all right? Our type of presses that are offset printing are 2 types of presses. One of them is called a sheet-fed press. Now a sheet-fed press means you actually print sheets of paper through the press, one at a time at high speed, okay? And you can only print one side at a time. The other type of printing process is called web offset printing. And that's a big press. They're the size of airplanes. You're going to see them. And they print rolls of paper. It's continuous printing that's pulled through the press at very high speeds, okay? Both of which are offset printing processes, both of which are printing CMYK. The sheet fed can only print one side, then the paper has to dry, and then we flip it over and we print the other side. On the heat set web presses, which are the really big offset presses, they print rolls of paper through the press at the same time. Both are printed, top and bottom. Sure.
You know how you do the rolls where it's the one side and it dries?
Okay, so good question. So the sheet fed press that prints sheets at a time, the drying process is actually self-dried. It comes off, the ink is wet, it's got to sit before I turn that sheet over and print it again, okay? The web presses are actually heat set dried. So in the terminology within the industry, it would be called heat set web presses. And what happens is then once it goes through and it prints through those 4 units, the CMYK, it then enters an oven. And these ovens are really long, and the temperatures are 300, 400, 500 degrees, depending on how fast you're going and what type of paper it is. And they actually heat that paper up, okay? That's not what dries the ink. What that does is it prepares it for the next step, which is then once it goes through the press, it goes around a big figure eight of these monster cylinders full of antifreeze. And they're ice cold. So it goes from hot to cold and it dries it instantly. Okay? And then post that, it goes through the folding configurations, which allows it to come off press as a folded signature. Now on the sheet fed presses, it can only come off as a sheet. It's not designed to do anything but come off as a sheet. The next step for that is it has to actually go to a guillotine cutter. It has to be cut, and then from there it goes to a folder and it has to be folded. The web offset presses actually will fold it and cut it all in one pass. So they're much bigger pieces of equipment, they're much more efficient, they're also much more expensive. But it's the type of printing that we do. So our sheet fed presses do short runs, our web presses do long runs. To put it into perspective, our sheet fed is between 5,000 and 10,000 books we like to print over there, okay? The web press can be from 10,000 to 5 million. So there's a big discrepancy in that, okay? Any questions about what we're about to see?
You said the sheet fed are short runs?
Sheet fed are designed for short runs. Web presses are designed for long runs. And the reason for that, the obvious reason for that, obviously, is that the bigger the press, the more expensive the press, the more involved it is, the more expensive it costs to operate, okay? So from an operating standpoint and a cost standpoint, I have to be able to really make sure the job that I'm going to print on that big press substantiates the cost that it's going to be to print that, right? Now, in the recent years, it's gotten where we've actually reduced that allocation because of the competitiveness, right? So 4 or 5 years ago, I wouldn't look at a 10,000 run magazine to put on that press. No way. Now we do, and we print a lot of 10,000 runs on that press because we had to be competitive. Everybody had to. Just like anything else, you have to make changes. You have to be a little nimble to be able to respond to the market's needs. One of Creel's many talents is our effectiveness of being able to change in a direction in the market that's going to continue to grow our business. Okay? So now we're going to walk out to the press area. Actually, we're going to walk out to the manufacturing area because a lot happens in the manufacturing area. The first thing we're going to see is obviously the printing process because that posts the proofing process, right? After the printing process, we're going to go to the bindery process, and that's where the book starts to come together, right, to finish it up. We also are, just so you know, and I'll back into it this way, is that we're Nevada's largest mailer. So most of the things that we produce on our presses will also go in the mail, okay, for magazines, right, subscribers, direct mail campaigns, you name it. So we mail about 6 to 7 million pieces a month. We have our own USPS representative that has his own office here who verifies our mail on a daily basis because we're such a large mailer. That used to not be the case. But as with anything in today's competitive market, you got to be more of a one-stop shop, right? So I talked about mobile technology, right? Online components. Printers never did that, and they still aren't doing it in high speed. We were one of the first. But now when I sit with these customers, they can talk to me about their online devices, their marketing campaigns, their printing, their bindery, and their mailing. So it's basically, don't have to talk to anybody but Micah. And we teach on that, and that's how we go to market, okay? So we're going to see the printing, we're going to see the bindery, and then we're going to end with the mailing, and then we'll come in with any other questions that you guys have. Because it's going to be hard to hear out there, okay? At least for me. All right. Okay. If I get loud, let me know, because when I can't hear, I start to talk loud. So I'll try to be cognizant of that. So you're looking at about 250,000 square foot of floor space. It's big. There's a lot of space. You can't see it all from end to end. But if you could, from the very far end of the building, we have our mechanical and maintenance company, which manages all this equipment. You can't have this kind of facility that's based on manufacturing without your own in-house staff. So there's a team of about 6 really smart guys that carry their computers around with them everywhere, plug them into the units to run diagnostic testing, and then can fix things through whatever process they feel they need to fix. You can't break down with a company like this and call somebody up and hope they're going to get to you. You got to have an in-house team to manage all your facility maintenance. Also back there we have some of our paper inventory, okay? We have off-site facilities that manage our paper, but we do have some of it, which is the immediate paper that we need to get us through the first 24, 48 hours of a job. Now keep in mind we're 24/7, so all of this stuff is happening constantly. It's just a very much of a rotation of repeating itself. From the paper inventory, we begin our press line. So that big piece of equipment right there is one of our presses, and there's actually 4 that are just like that that go all across that way. And we're going to go see each one of them. We'll spend time with one of them so you can see how it operates. Right to the right of that, behind that little area where it says safety is no accident, on the other side of that is our sheet fed presses. Now remember we talked about 2 types of presses, sheet fed and web offset. Sheet fed presses are over there. Next to those sheet fed presses is also 2 other pieces of equipment which we use for coating. Now I'll get into that a little bit later, but basically coating is an extra laminate of very high gloss or very dull that we apply to give an effect to something, right? A lot of the covers that you see on publications have what's called a UV coating, so it's a very nice high shine coating that we apply to those covers. It's essential in what we do. We offer different types of coatings. It's part of our process, okay? So now we're going to walk over to the printing units. We talked about the process of how it works. When we get there, it's going to be hard to ask me questions because you're not going to be able to hear. Or I'm not going to be able to hear, rather, okay? So let's go ahead and walk over to the printing press. Okay, so we talked about 2 types of presses, right? Primary types of printing that we do. The sheet fed and the web. This is the sheet fed press. This is called a Komori. It's a Japanese press. It's an outstanding piece of equipment. We've been big fans of Komori for years. This is a 6-color Komori. It's actually a 6-color Komori with a coater. And what that means is that it can print your 4-color process plus 2 additional inks, whether it be a PMS ink. You guys familiar with PMS inks? So PMS ink is an ink that's specially made outside of the process inks, right? So when you're looking at a printed piece and you see a silver or a gold or a day glow, that's not a process color. That's a PMS color. And so it's specially created, just like when you go to paint your house, right? You can go and say, I want that color, or they're going to go, well, you can't print at CMYK, or paint at CMYK, right? So they come up with a way to design that color through whites, blacks, whatever it is, to make that special ink. So this press can print your process plus 2 PMS inks. It also has the ability to run what's called aqueous coating. Now aqueous coating allows you to be able to actually, if you print the CMYK or whatever you're printing, to apply a nice clear coating to it that adds a little bit more of a shine to it, also protects the printing a little bit. Absolutely outstanding addition to this press to have a coater on it. The press over here, what's actually operational, which we're going to walk over to see, is just like this press, only it's a smaller press. It runs a different size sheet. The capability here will actually run a max size sheet of 2840, okay? So you can put a lot on 28 inches by 40 inches. That is a 23 by 26. So it's a smaller press designed to run smaller pieces, right? So this is a short run press, that's a shorter run press. You understand? Okay. So let's walk over and take a look at it and you'll get an idea what I'm talking about. You can't walk up to see what he's printing because some things you can't see what we print. There's reasons for that. But the idea on the process is he starts with blank pieces of paper. He runs it through the press. This is the black unit, this is the blue unit, this is the red unit, that's the yellow unit, and then he actually has a 5th color to be able to print a 5th color process if he wants. So the paper's coming down into the unit, it's going between the plate and the blanket, and it's printing one side, black, blue, red, yellow, okay? Then he takes it over here, and he lets it dry once he's gone through and got it just the way he wants it, and then he flips it over and prints the other side, whatever that may be, okay? Okay, so you put the stack of paper at the very end of it, which is called a feeder, okay? And that's the start of it.
So there is a feeder.
Yeah, it's a feeder. And so what it was doing was actually picking up each sheet individually with suction cups, feeds it onto a conveyor belt. Once it goes into the conveyor belt, it hits what's called our grippers. And it's all cylinder based. Everything is cylinder based, okay? The plate goes around a cylinder, the blanket goes around the cylinder, which in fact is what actually prints the image. So again, the ink will be put onto the plate, the image will be put onto the blanket, and then the blanket will actually transfer that image to the paper. But it's all cylinder based, okay? So once it gets down the conveyor belt, enters the sheet fed press, there's actually grippers on the cylinders that cause it to wrap around and continue to go through the press. When it comes down here, it's grabbed by another set of things which are called gripper arms, and they grab it and they take it and they deliver the job. Okay? Okay, guys. Remember how we talked about coating? So here's a side that has no coating to it. Okay, it's just been printed CMYK. The other side, he's actually applying a spot coating to it to give it an effect to the cover. Now, this is a cover of a magazine. The magazine is called Multi-Unit Franchise. Can you see the UV coating that's been put on the sphere? Yeah. So he applied that, which gives it a very unique and, in fact, gorgeous effect to this process.
That's spot coating?
That's spot coating. Otherwise, it would look like this. He actually has two types of coating going on here. This is a gloss piece of paper, okay? This is a gloss piece of paper. So he's actually coated this part matte. He's made it dull fillet. You can feel it. See how that feels? See how smooth that is? That's not that way. That's sticky and your finger gets stuck to it. So he's applied a dull coating to the whole sheet. Then he's come back and he's applied a nice gloss coating here. So it really gets that separation. Had he not put this dull coating down first, this wouldn't stand out like it does. It would almost, you would see it, but not as much as you'd like to when you put the dull down. So again, these are services that we provide our customers in talking with them to be able to separate us from our competition, saying, well, we can do all kinds of creative things that's going to separate you from your competition and help grow your advertising, blah, blah, blah.
Is that a two process?
That's a two process. This was done with what's called a matte aqueous coating, and this was called a UV gloss coating, two processes. And the reason it's two processes is because they're two different types of coatings. You can't mix the coatings at the same time. It has to be done separately. Anything that you see that is palletized in this format is sheet-fed paper. Web paper is actually rolls of paper, and you can see it back there. See at the very back there? You're going to see that actually physically on the press in a moment, but that's called web paper, right? So it's two different processes. Sheet-fed is individual sheets, goes to the cutters, goes to the folders, goes to the bindery. Web presses are designed to be able to print rolls of paper through the process at the same time at a very high speed, and be able to do some sort of finishing online, which is our folding, right? We talked about that, and I'm going to show you that to you in a minute. And the reasons that they're so dramatic in cost and inefficiencies is because of, yes, thank you, is because of the amount that you're going to print, right? Short run press, long run press. In the printing process, the first thing that we do once we have our plates and our proofs out the press is it's called a make ready, which means we have to go through steps to make that product look its absolute best before we start to save it. And there's waste that happens, and there's a time factor that happens as a result of that. I've ran these type of presses, and then I've ran these type of presses. Both of them I ran about the same amount of time. I was half a dozen years running those presses, another half a dozen or more running these presses. I actually did the first installation of this press at our old building a long time ago. To make ready a job may take, in those days when I was running presses, may take you 2 hours to make ready a job, where I actually have to do things physically to the press. It's kind of like building a puzzle, okay? So they give me all the pieces to the puzzle. I have to put it together, which is I have to put the plates on the press. I have to align those plates just right so when it prints that it lines up. If I'm not lined up, it's going to print, it's going to look blurry to you guys. You guys might have seen something in books that look blurry, and I'm going to try to show that to you. There's ink densities that I have to be concerned about and water densities in order to make that print nice, right? So if I have too much red or too much yellow, you're going to physically see that on there. Now remember, the customer's approved a proof, so I'm trying to match that proof, whether it's a digital proof or a hard proof. I have to make that press do that. In the days that I did it, it was very mechanical. In today's days, it's very software driven. There's information on those plates that automatically will tell that press to do certain things. For me, I would stop the press, I would go up and I would actually move that plate. I would open up those ink values. I would add more water. I would do things to make it to where it print. It was very much a trade. Now you need to be a computer engineer to print those presses practically. It's a different process, right? But it would take a couple hours for me to do that back in those days. Same thing on those monster presses. It would take me a couple hours to put those puzzles together, me and my team of 5 guys, to make that job look beautiful before I could say start saving. Your waste may be, I don't know, a trailer full of paper before I say good to save back in those days. Now, because of software and the equipment that we have and technology, our make-readies are 15 minutes. 2 hours, 15 minutes, which means my waste went from a lot to virtually not much at all. $15 million equipment, $15 million to buy that press. The press I ran was $1 million. So obviously, just like anything else, through time, advancements in technology and software allows us to be able to be much quicker, much more faster. So you got to run those things a lot to pay for those presses. Just print sheets of paper. These presses can also print sheets of paper. So when I'm printing a magazine where it's a long run, let's say it's 100,000, 200,000, $500,000, it's going to take me a long time to print over there with sheets, right? And when you print covers for perfect bound books, they have to be printed this way first. You can't fold them because of the bindery process, okay? So I can actually sheet these on the press, both sides, and you'll see these on these as we go down through the equipment at very high speeds, okay? Now to put it in perspective a little deeper is that those presses run about 8 to 10,000 an hour, pieces an hour, sheets an hour, okay? These presses run 60,000 sheets an hour. So big difference, much higher speed. If you got something wrong on the press, you're wasting a lot really fast, right? So again, the advancements in technology allows us to be able to monitor that, manage that, and keep that waste down to a minimal. Not to mention you got a team of 5 people that are watching that the whole time that you're printing, okay? Web that was running through the press, and it repeated itself over and over again, okay? Now this was attached to a roll of paper. So it started blank, it went through the press, and it printed the black, it printed the blue, it printed the red, and it printed the yellow, both sides at the same time, very high speed. It went up and came down what's called a folder. And the folder takes it and it does a configuration that allows it to come off the signature conveyor belt as a finished signature. This is 16 pages. If the book was a 32-page book, I would print one more of these, put them together, put a cover around it, and it would be done as a book. Does that make sense? Okay. You'll see it more clearly as we get out there. Yes?
Do you get any that...
That's all gone away. It's all done through instruments that are driven by software. Okay? So, but to your point, there is things that can happen during the process. Once we've done the make ready, we're saving the books, we're hauling, we're running 50,000 an hour. We have to monitor it and manage it. There's things that can happen in the process. So maybe a drip of ink falls and it lands on the sheet. Well, when it drops, it may hit 50 books because those books are going really fast, right? So that drop hits it, bounces, another one drops. It may hit 50 books where I got a yellow streak that runs through the book. Because when it gets to the printing process or the next unit, it's going to flatten that drop out and it's going to make a streak. So it's up to us to be able to see that, right? And get that and throw it away so the customer doesn't get it. Or worse, their advertiser gets it and there's a big yellow stain on their advertisement. Then the advertiser goes, hey publisher, I'm not paying for my advertiser because there's a big yellow stain. He goes, well look, it's only a couple of them. He goes, how do I know that? Right? And then the publisher calls Micah and says, hey Micah, I'm not paying for the printing because there's a big yellow stain on the book that my advertiser's not paying me for. I'm like, well it's only a few. He goes, how do I know that? Well here's how we know that. As part of our process, our quality control process, we do what's called time pulls. So in every process of what we build here, we are instructed to be able to pull things every 5 minutes or less, depending on how fast we're printing and what the quality or the quantity is. If my guys are doing their job out on press and the time pulls are every minute, they're going to catch, it's very likely they're going to catch what happened and they're going to be able to eliminate it. If they don't, and it goes into the staging area, right, this signature is completed and printed, there's 200,000 of these, there's 20 pallets stacked up there, and it goes into the staging area. From the staging area, it goes into the bindery area. There's quality control people that are looking for this stuff. They can't see every one of them, but they have their time pull. So when it's going through the bindery process, they're pulling one off the bindery every couple of minutes, and they're looking, and they have their protocol to decide if it's quality. If someone sees it, boom, they stop the equipment, They go in behind it and they go in front of those to find out if there's any other like that, and they throw them away. The chances of us finding it are good. Sometimes you don't, but more often you do. Our presses aren't running right now. They're in between make-readies, which is very unique to have them all down at the same time. Very unique. So I'm hoping that one of them will fire up in the next few minutes that we're here, but we can't wait all day to try to show this to you. So what I will do is we will start from the back of the press and we'll walk forward. At least you'll be able to see the process through my explanation. So rolls of paper, right? Monster, 2,000 pounds right here of paper. I could bench press this if you guys want to see. I'm just kidding. But obviously, depending on the job, depends on the paper, right? So most publications are printed on a fairly thin sheet. A lot of our commercial publications and commercial catalogs are printed on a much thicker sheet. This, and to get into paper substrates, we would be here till next week, and then I'd only cover a little bit of it. So there's a lot to talk about there, but we won't get into that. We're talking about the process, right? So aside of the type of paper we're using, the process here is to take this roll of paper and to load it into these, what's called roll stands. Roll stands obviously support the paper and allow it to feed through the press continuously. What's real important about web printing is that you control your tension of paper. Okay, so if the tension's not right on the paper and that web is too loose or too tight, it's going to break in the process of printing. When I first started printing the press, on the web press, the installation, that's all we did was to web up the press. That means we would take it from this end to the other end, because as soon as you started up, the press would break the web. Every time. It happened for months. I mean, we walked around with the barrel of the gun in our mouth all the time going, what's wrong with this press? Well, our tension was wrong. It took us a while to figure out that our tension was wrong. Once we got our tension right, which means there's certain things that happen to that paper that make it just right to go through that press to where it's not going to break. Now the presses these days, that's a no-brainer. The tension's almost automatic. It's easy to figure out. Back then, not so much. So we start with rolls of paper. We're about to enter the units. Now this is a double web press. That means you can print 2 webs at one time, which means it repeats CMYK twice. Okay, so it allows me to be able to put one web through the press and another web through the press and have 2 of them at the same time. So that signature that I showed you guys a little while ago was 1 web. We can do that times 2. Does everybody follow me? So I showed you a 16-page signature. So there was 8 pages on top and 8 pages on bottom. When we folded it, it came down to a 16-page. If I do another one of those at the same time, I can now put those together and make it 32 pages. Black, blue, red, yellow. Remember we talked about the blankets? We talked about the plates. So if you look inside of this unit, you're going to see the black plate. You can come through and look in there. It's not going to hurt you. It's not running. Sure. So you see the black plate, which is the white cylinder looking thing on the top. Directly underneath it is the rubber blanket. Okay, so the web goes in between the 2 rubber blankets, the cylinders, right? So you have the plates that are printing onto the rubber blankets. The rubber blankets then offset the image onto the paper at the same time, okay? And then you have the blue, the red, and the yellow. So then the blue lays on top of the black in its area that it's supposed to be.